All right, I think we're here. I think we're live with week 4 of the NBA Power Rankings. We're getting kind of far into the season. We're a month into the season at this point. Teams have played anywhere from like 10 to 12 to 13 games, somewhere in that range. So we have a pretty good amount of data of what teams are going to be good, what teams will look like, and then just who is where in terms of the power rankings. And I think this will be the best one yet. So let's just get right into it. At number 30, disappointingly, it's the Detroit Pistons, who have fallen a lot. They were, I think, in the teens after week 1 because they started like 2-1, but the Pistons have now lost 10 straight games to fall all the way to 2-11. They're down 2 spots from last week, sitting at number 30 now after 3 losses, losing to the Bulls, the Hawks, and the Cavs. But, I want to take some time to talk about the most fun player for every team. And the most fun player for Detroit has hands down been Ausar Thompson, who has just been really good this season. 12 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, 3.5 assists and 2 blocks. Is just doing a little bit of everything. I think this is one of the most exciting rookies I've seen come into the league in some time. I'm really impressed with what I've seen from Ausar. Cade and Duran's stats have both slipped from where they were earlier in the season, but the Pistons slot in here for me at number 30. Going to 29, I have the Washington Wizards, where they've been pretty much since we started. I think they started at 30, but in week 2 they moved to 29 and have now been there for, I believe, 3 straight weeks, sitting at 2-10 now for the season so far. And this week they once again lose every game. They lose all 4 games, losing to the Nets, Raptors, Mavs, and Knicks. And outside of that Raptors game, none of them were really even close. Kyle Kuzma still the leading scorer for this team at 23.5 per game. Jordan Poole is only averaging like 15.5. He has still struggled throughout the season so far. But the most fun player on this Wizards team to me is Daniel Gafford. You could have said it's Kuzma, you could have said it's Poole, but I don't really love the shot chucking on poor efficiency. I prefer people making a real winning impact, which is what Daniel Gafford is doing. 9 points, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks, and shooting 73% from the field. I think Big Dan Gafford has looked great and is one of the most underrated big men in the league today. Moving to number 28, I have the San Antonio Spurs, who are 3-9, but have the worst point differential in the entire NBA. They're like a minus 13 on average, which is kind of crazy. They're easily the worst point differential in the NBA so far this season, and I have them at 28. You could have an argument they should be at 30, but they do have some more wins than the other teams, and at least some impressive wins over the Suns. But overall, just haven't been good. Victor Wembanyama is leading them in pretty much every single category: points, rebounds, steals, and blocks. And I think it's kind of hands down that Wemby is still their best player. Is the most fun player on this team. Like, if you're tuning into a Spurs game, you're tuning in to watch Wemby because they're probably going to lose. 19 points, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a steal per game. Moving to number 27, we have the Memphis Grizzlies, who are now 2-9, actually moving up 3 spots. Number 30 last week, go to 27 now this week. And that's not necessarily because the Grizzlies have been so great that I had to drastically move them up the standings. I would say it's more so that the teams behind them are really, really bad. But the Grizzlies, they did just lose Marcus Smart, and I think they said Marcus will be out like 3 to 5 weeks. It's going to be a long injury timeline for Marcus Smart, but the Grizzlies did pick up a win this week, beating the James Harden Clippers, and they're led in scoring by Desmond Bane at 25.5 a game. Again, Jaren Jackson Jr. is still disappointing in terms of rebounds. It is Tillman leading them in rebounds, and Marcus Smart, who's not going to be playing, is leading them in assists and steals, so that could turn out to be a big negative pretty quickly. But the most fun player on this team, I think, is easily Desmond Bane. 25.5 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, and 1.5 steals, and he's been really good down the stretch of games, because in the fourth quarter, it feels like when they've won these 2 games, it's because Bane takes over in the fourth, and they've even had comebacks because of how good Bane has been in the fourth quarter, making comebacks, and I've been impressed with how good Bane has been. If they were better, he'd be an all-star. He's putting up all-star production, but because of their record, he probably won't be. At 26, I have the Portland Trailblazers falling 4 spots from number 22. They're 3-9 on the year. A lot of this has to do with injuries. Shaedon Sharpe is missing time. Anthony Simons is out. Scoot Henderson is out. Robert Williams is now out for the year. So if you're tuning into a Trailblazers game, a lot of the times their best players are like Skylar Mays and Duop Reith. It's kind of tough to watch Portland these days. They could move back up, like that's totally possible, but they'll need to get some players back. Jeremy Grant leading them in scoring at 23 a night, and DeAndre Ayton has been really good for them this year. He looks like a big win in that trade that they did. But the most fun player, hands down, has still been Shaedon Sharpe in his second year in the league now, and he's been great. 19 points per game, 6 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Hasn't been super efficient to this point through the season, but still a phenomenal athlete, a super fun watch, and looks like a future star in this league. Moving to number 25, I have the Chicago Bulls, who have been really disappointing. They lose 3 of 4 games this week. I think it's more and more likely by the day that the Bulls end up blowing this thing up, and I think it's just not long for this core in Chicago. They do beat the Pistons. They get a win against them, but the Magic sweep them in a back-to-back matchup, and the Bucks beat them as well. Zach LaVine still the leading scorer for this team, but Zach, DeMar, and Vooch are all right around the same level. In terms of assists, they still don't have a playmaker. That's the biggest problem with the Chicago team. There is no playmaking. DeMar DeRozan leading them in assists at just over 4 a game, and the most fun player for this team is Alex Caruso. 9.5 points per game, 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and 1.5 steals. And the big thing with Caruso is that he's hitting all these really clutch shots down the stretch, which is fun to watch. Like, he's a impacting the game more offensively than I'd say he did last year, while also still being a great defender. They're going to get a lot for Caruso at the deadline, but like I said, they're going to blow this thing up. At number 24, I have the Charlotte Hornets, who are 3-8, and they did lose all their games, but I still have them going up 2 spots in my rankings because of the return of Miles Bridges, who, let me make this clear right away, is not a good person. I don't support his actions in any sense of the word, but he's a good basketball player, and I think he's going to make them a better team. 23.5 points per game for LaMelo Ball, who has been really, really good over the past couple weeks. Mark Williams also dominant on the glass, nearly 10 a game, and has really been a monster on the offensive boards. He's getting a ton of offensive rebounds, and LaMelo Ball doing a lot of playmaking for this team. Terry Rozier has missed some time, and so has Gordon Hayward, so when they get all their guys back, they could actually be good, which is why I have them at 24, and I'm not going to call him the most fun player because I don't really think anything surrounding him is fun at this point, but the most intriguing player for this team I think is easily Miles Bridges, who in his debut back from a year off because of horrible off-court issues, 17 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals. It feels like he's going to make an impact, and he'll probably make the team better. At number 23, I have the Utah Jazz, who are 4-8. I moved them up 2 spots, and I think they're a team that could really shoot up the rankings pretty soon because of how they've looked over the past couple weeks, especially since moving Keontae George into the starting lineup, and he's looked really good for them. They beat the Blazers, and then they almost beat the Suns with Durant and Booker last night. It was a super impressive game that I really thought they might walk away from with the victory, but Lauri Markkanen still leading them in scoring. I thought it might be Clarkson because he had 37 last night, has a couple 30-point games so far this year, but Keontae George doing a great job at taking over the playmaking duties. 5 assists per game. It's likely more than that as a starter, but he's been really good. If you haven't seen it, go back, watch that Jazz game. For this one specific play, Keontae is dribbling, and he has it in his left hand off the bounce, throws this bullet pass to Lauri Markkanen for an easy finish at the rim. It was beautiful, and Keontae's looked really good. He hits tough shots, and he looks like he could be a real point guard with the playmaking we're seeing. And I think as the team goes forward, he's going to be the most fun player to watch. 9 points, 5 assists, and 2.5 rebounds. He could be special for this Utah team. At number 22, I have the Toronto Raptors, who are now 5-7. They fall down 7 spots from 15 to 22. Interestingly enough, they were 22 the week before that, so it's been 22 to 15 to 22, and they just didn't really look as good this week as they have the weeks before. They lose to the Celtics twice, lose to the Bucks, and then barely scrape out a win against the Wizards. Scotty Barnes, though, has been great. 20 points per game, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 stocks. He's just doing everything for them. Scotty is an all-star, and he's looked nearly like a dominant player for Toronto. Scotty's been great, but the team overall just isn't winning. And interestingly, the NBA right now has 19 teams that are at least 500, so it's not a huge indictment on Toronto being bad. Rather, there are just so many teams playing well right now that it's hard to put the Raptors any higher. At 21, I have the Los Angeles Clippers, who picked up their first win of the James Harden era yesterday against the Rockets. They move up 2 spots from last week, number 23 up to number 21. Losing 2 out of 3, they lose to the Grizzlies. They almost beat the Nuggets. And then they beat the Rockets thanks to a James Harden game-winning 4-point play. It was very cool to see Kawhi defer to Harden for a shot like that down the stretch. But this has been the best year of Paul George's career since he left OKC, I'd say. But Paul George this year, 24.5 points per game, 6 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and 2.5 steals. He's been a monster getting steals, and Paul George looks great this season. It's been super fun to watch for this Clippers team, and I think they're going to turn it around and get back to 500 by the time we do the rankings next week. The Golden State Warriors are the biggest faller of this week's rankings, going from number 6, all the way to number 20. They lose every game this week. Yes, Steph Curry's out, and now Draymond is out with that suspension, but it just looks bad for Golden State. After a good start that was really promising, they've just been really, really poor in terms of their offense without Curry, because Curry is kind of the only thing going for them offensively. They lose 4 games this week. In terms of the season, Steph Curry leading them in scoring with nearly 31 a night, Kevon Looney on the boards, and Chris Paul doing a lot of playmaking off the bench. But I think the most fun player with Steph not playing has to be Pods, Brandon Podziemski. 18 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 50% from 3. This is over the last 2 games, so the games without Curry, Podziemski has been kind of the lead offensive guy, and he's been really good. Klay Thompson and Wiggins have struggled, but Pods looks like he's going to be a piece of the rotation moving forward, because he's going to be really difficult to keep off the floor with how well he's playing. There was a game the other night where he put up 8 points in 1 minute, which is just insane, and his production and efficiency have been really eye-catching for this Warriors team. At number 19, I have the Brooklyn Nets, who are the first 500 team of this rankings, and every team from this point out will be 500 or better, because there are just so many teams who are playing well at this point in the season. The Nets, 6-6. I wanted to put them higher, but I just couldn't do it. I love this team, though, everything that they bring, but no Cam Thomas and no Ben Simmons for the past week. They do win 2 out of 3, though, beating the Wizards, kind of handling the Magic in a surprising victory. It was really impressive. And then losing a somewhat close one to Miami, who's on that big win streak. But Cam Thomas is their leading scorer. Claxton getting a lot of rebounds and blocks. It's very good that they have him back from injury, because Clax has been really, really good. The most fun player, though, I'd say without Cam. Cam is the most fun player on this team to me, and then it's probably like Ben Simmons outside of Cam. But the most fun player that's playing for them right now is Lonnie Walker, who they got on a minimum contract in free agency. He's been kind of shockingly good. 16 points per game, 51% from the field, and 43% from 3. He's been a really good offensive weapon. Isn't doing a lot outside of scoring, but he's scoring the ball at a really good clip. At number 18, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers at 6-6, who are going to continue to fly up the rankings if they keep winning with their current core back from injury. They go up 3 spots from last week, moving from 21 to 18. They beat the Warriors, which was an impressive win at the time. Now the Warriors don't look as good as maybe we thought they were, and it doesn't feel like the win is quite as impressive. They lose to the Kings, and then they pick up two kind of cupcake wins against the Blazers and Pistons. But Donovan Mitchell this season has been arguably the best we've ever seen from him. 29 points per game, 5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 2 steals. I love watching Donovan Mitchell this season. If you haven't, try to tune in, because he just feels unstoppable on any given night, and the Cavs are going to have a high chance to win because of how good Donovan Mitchell is for this Cavs team. And now they have Garland back, they have Jared Allen back, and they have Donovan and Evan Mobley. So, Max Strus has been good for them as well. So with all those guys, they should start winning a lot of games and fly back to well over 500. At number 17, I have the Atlanta Hawks, who outside of the Warriors are the biggest fallers in this week's rankings, going from number 8 last week to number 17 this week, down 9 spots. They lose to the Heat, Knicks, and Sixers this week, which is kind of a tough gauntlet of teams. I'm not trying to say that though they should have easily won those games or something, but the Hawks to me just should go 500 in those kind of games with how they look to start the year, and they just can't beat the Knicks or the Heat. And they do beat the Pistons, but again, that's not a huge victory with how the Pistons look right now. But Trae Young, arguably the best playmaking season of his career at over 11 assists per game. Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu doing a great job on the glass as well. But the most fun player to me for this Hawks team so far has been DeJounte Murray, who I would say has been their best player. 21 points per game, 5.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds, and 1.5 steals, doing everything and making a clear positive impact. It isn't quite the assist level we saw in San Antonio, but it looks more like what we're used to with DeJounte. At number 16, I have the New York Knicks, who are now 7-5 on the season. They've really turned it around after a somewhat subpar start to the year, and the Knicks look like the Knicks from last year once again, and because of that, they move up 2 spots, going from number 18 to number 16 in this week's rankings, and they win 3 out of their 4 games, beating the Hornets, Hawks, and Wizards while losing to the Celtics in a game that wasn't super competitive. Brunson has finally picked up his scoring, 23.5 points per game, and if you want to say Mitchell Robinson has been their best player, there's kind of sneakily an argument for that. 11 rebounds, 1.5 steals, and 1 block. Mitchell Robinson has been really kind of impressively good compared to what we've seen from him in the past. And then the most fun player on this team right now, it's RJ Barrett. It is a breakout season for RJ with the Knicks. 23 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, and shooting 50% from 3. If he can keep up this level of 3-point shooting, RJ is a completely different player. He's arguably a star level player and completely changes what this Knicks team has looked like, because RJ just looks really good to start the year, and I've been really impressed. At number 15, I have the New Orleans Pelicans, who are 6-6 on the season now and picked up a couple of really impressive victories recently. They're up 5 spots from last week, from number 20 to number 15. They did lose to the Mavs, but then they beat them in the next game in a victory that was kind of a dominant one, and they also beat the Nuggets yesterday in what I would say was the most surprising outcome of the day. And they've looked really good when they've had their guys. Still no CJ McCollum, who's working back from a partially collapsed lung, but the rest of the guys are there and they're playing well. Nearly 23 points per game from Brandon Ingram, who's leading them in both scoring and playmaking, and Herb Jones with 3.7 stocks. He's been a defensive monster this year, but the most fun player to me on this Pelicans team has been rookie Jordan Hawkins, who's averaging 13 points per game, 4 rebounds, and shooting 36% from 3 on nearly 8 attempts a game. The level of efficiency on the volume of shots he's taking is actually crazy, and we haven't really seen a rookie hit this level of threes with this level of volume at this point in their careers. So Hawkins is probably a top 5 rookie of the year candidate right now. He's probably 4, right behind Asar Thompson, but Jordan Hawkins has been a huge reason why this team has looked as good as they have. At number 14, I have the Phoenix Suns, who also get back to 500, 6-6 on the season now, and it feels like Kevin Durant and Devin Booker will be playing for this team going forward because Book had missed some time, but it feels like Book is back. Bradley Beal will continue to miss games, but Booker is there and available now, and they beat the Timberwolves, who had been really impressive, and they also beat the Jazz in a tight one that they had to kind of eke out, but an impressive victory nonetheless. Kevin Durant looks like a MVP candidate despite being, I believe, like 35 years old, but KD has been great, and Booker, when he has played, has also been really impressive because of the playmaking. They don't have a true point guard. That was kind of the biggest concern with this Suns team. Is Bradley Beal going to be the point guard? Is it going to be Booker? It's Booker, and he's doing a great job of it, averaging over 10 assists per game, 10.3 assists per game. Looks like one of the best playmakers in the entire league. It's kind of shocking how good of a playmaker that Devin Booker has been, but also scoring nearly 30 points a game on top of it with 6 rebounds. Book looks like a superstar and a top 10 player in the league, but just can he stay on the floor? At number 13, I have the Los Angeles Lakers, who are now 7-6 after a pretty solid week, and they're in the same spot that they were last week at number 13. They win 3 out of 4 games, Blazers, Grizzlies, and Blazers, not exactly a death row of opponents, and then lose to the best team they play in the Kings. But LeBron has been great again this season, as has Cam Reddish. Shout out Cam Reddish, who's averaging like 13 or 14 points per game, nearly 2 steals, and shooting really well from 3. Since Cam has moved into the starting lineup, he's looked really good. But LeBron is still the guy to watch. If you're tuning into a Lakers game, you're still watching for LeBron. 25.5 points per game, 8.5 rebounds, and 6.5 assists. Doing all of this in year 21 is insane. And the Lakers are winning because of how good LeBron has been, and he's turning around Cam Reddish's career as well. At number 12, I have the Milwaukee Bucks, who I thought about putting higher, but because they lose to the Magic, they come one spot behind them, and the Bucks sit at number 12. I'm still not really sure what to make of this team, despite having some really impressive performances from individual guys. They lose to the Magic to start the week, which is why the Magic stay ahead of them, but they beat the Bulls, Raptors, and Hornets in what are convincing victories. Giannis has still been their best player, but over the past week, the 2 guards have looked really good. Damian Lillard and Malik Beasley have looked great. So Malik Beasley, over the last 2 games, which are the best 2 games of his year so far, he has put up 25 points per game in those games, while shooting nearly 70% from the field and from 3. He has been ridiculously good over the last 2. So if Dame and Beasley can both stay putting up over 20 on top of what they'll get from Giannis when he comes back, this team will be ridiculous and find themselves in the top 5 sooner rather than later. At number 11, I have the Orlando Magic. They've been really good to start the year. I think they're legitimately a good playoff team. I think they've shown that. They're one of the best defenses in the league. Their offense is kind of hit or miss, but the defense is great. 7-5 to start the year. They're down 1 spot from last week, going from 10 to 11, but that's not really anything against them. It's more about the teams that moved up. The Bucks, they did beat them to open the week. Lose kind of a shocking one. By 20 to the Nets, but the sweep of the Bulls I thought was impressive. I thought they'd probably split those games, but they take them both in what was just a clear kind of owning of the other team, which is funny because Franz and Wendell Carter Jr. were the 2 players that ended up being traded for Nikola Vucevic, so the Magic always loved to rub that in the Bulls' face, and Franz was good in those games, but the most interesting player for this team to me still is Paolo Banchero, who's averaging 18.5 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. Paolo has looked really good. I've been impressed with what I've seen from Banchero this year. After struggling to start the year, has picked it up over the last few games and now looks more like what we saw in his rookie season. Jalen Suggs looks like a completely different player this year because of what he's doing on the defensive end, and Jonathan Isaac blocking a lot of shots as well and making an impact. He had 18 and 10 the other night. Jonathan Isaac is looking good. The OKC Thunder slot in at number 10 to me, who are now 8-4 on the season. They move up 1 spot from last week, basically swapping with the Orlando Magic, going from 11 to 10. They win all 3 games this week, beating the Spurs the Suns, and the Warriors. SGA has been phenomenal for them once again, and Chet Holmgren also doing a lot for them as well. To me, the most fun player hasn't been SGA, but rather Chet Holmgren. 15.5 points per game, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, and shooting 44% from 3. I've loved what I've seen from Chet, and I think this is really impressive, the level of efficiency he's playing with as a rookie. I have the Rockets at number 9, who now sit at 6-4. Despite losing to the Clippers last night, that game was officiated horribly. I thought it said a lot that they even had a chance to win the game because of how bad the refs were. But Alperen Şengün has been dominant this year. They don't move at all. They were 9 last week for me as well, but they beat the Nuggets to start the week, a super impressive win on, I believe, Sunday, and then they didn't play again until last night, which is crazy. They basically had the entire week off. But the most fun player to me for this Rockets team, it could have been a few different guys. Fred VanVleet has been fun for them, as has Dillon Brooks, but it is Şengün. 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. Would be an all-star for sure if they held the all-star game today. The Sacramento Kings, I skipped the Kings. I don't want to be doing that. We'll go back a few. Now we have a sneak peek on what the teams are ahead. But the Kings I have at 8, who are 7-4, move up 6 spots from last week. It is either the first or second biggest move up. I think it's the second largest jump this week. They move up 6 spots to number 8. And they've been great, especially with De'Aaron Fox back. They beat the Cavs in an impressive win. That was Fox's first game back, then beat the Lakers handily and kind of struggle a little bit against the Spurs, but win it regardless. De'Aaron Fox is leading the league in scoring at 32.2 points per game, and Sabonis, I believe, is second in rebounding, only behind Nikola Jokic. So the duo of the Fox and the Ox looks even better last year, which is what my main video was about today, if you wanted to check that out. But the most fun player for this team has hands down been De'Aaron Fox. 32 points per game, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, and 2 steals. Looks like a superstar and one of the top 2 or 3 guards in the league right now. He has an argument to be in MVP conversations because of how good he's been. And I think with him back, the Kings are one of the better teams in the league. The Heat rise all the way from 17 to number 7 after winning 7 straight games now to move to 8-4 on the season. They beat the Hawks, Spurs, Hornets, and Nets this week. No Tyler Hero, but it hasn't really mattered because Duncan Robinson is back with a vengeance. Some other guys have been impressive as well. Haywood Highsmith has looked really good this year. Jaime Jaquez has been good for them as well. And the Heat look back to what they were. They look even better than last year, honestly. I think the Heat this year look better than they did last season, and I think are a contender in the East once again. And the best player, the most fun player on this team for me to watch so far has been Bam Adebayo, who is having the best year of his career. 23 points per game, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 stocks. I think he could win Defensive Player of the Year this season. I know he's been campaigning for it for a while. But I heard someone I was listening to, like the Low Post today, I think, and Nikias Duncan said that he thought Bam Adebayo should be in MVP conversations, which is crazy. But I low-key don't hate it. I think that could happen. Not that he'll win it, but he'll be in the conversation because of how much he's impacting winning, how much he's doing on both ends of the floor for this Heat team, and the Heat look fantastic, man. Yeah, in the comments, Fox is really good. I totally agree, and I think the Kings will be a playoff team for back-to-back years now. The Pacers slot in here at number 6. I believe they still have the best offense in NBA history, according to statistics right now. Offensive rating, they have the best one ever. 7-4. They're putting up like 126 points per game, which is just insane. Only played 2 games this week, played the Sixers twice and split it. But Halliburton has been great. He's the most fun player, and this is over the last 2 games. Tyrese Halliburton has averaged 29 points per game, 16 assists per game, and has had 0 turnovers over that stretch. Tyrese Halliburton is crazy and is really making a claim as arguably the best point guard in the Eastern Conference. And right now I'd say it probably is him. And wow, the Pacers have been good to start the year. I have the Mavs at 5, staying the same spot as last week. 9-3, they win 2 out of their 3 games this week, splitting with the Pelicans and then beating the Wizards. And Luka Doncic looks just as good as ever. I know I believe he's top 3 in terms of betting odds for MVP right now. 31 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists. He's doing everything. He's just doing a little bit of everything, and the Mavs look really good, and they've finally gotten him a great supporting cast with Grant Williams, with Derek Lively, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Derek Jones Jr. They look great, and Kyrie is kind of slowly bringing it along, and they look really solid. The Pacers, I agree, will be a top 6 seed. I think the Pacers could even be as high as having home court advantage and finishing with a top 4 seed in the East this season. The Minnesota Timberwolves, I have at number 4. Oh, I skipped ahead again. It's tough. The Timberwolves, I have at number 4. 8-3 on the season now. They go down 1 spot from last week, falling from number 3 to number 4 because of that loss to the Suns, where it just looked like the Suns were better than they were, which I didn't think was a great look. They beat the Warriors twice, first in the Rudy Gobert headlock game, and then in the no Steph, no Draymond game after. They kind of struggle, actually. But hey, they're good overall. I think they have impressive wins that earns them a top spot like this. And Anthony Edwards has been ridiculously fun to watch this season. 26 points per game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1.5 steals per game this year. Anthony Edwards is emerging as a superstar. Best year of his career so far. And by the way, guys, let me just say this, by the way. These Wolves jerseys are clean. I love these jerseys. I know a lot of people hate a lot of the new Nike jerseys, but I think this Wolves jersey is actually really, really sick. But the Wolves are winning. They're the best defense in basketball. They have the best interior defender in Rudy Gobert. They have the best duo of wing defenders in Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, and the Wolves are going to be a contending team this season because of how good their defense is and because of how good their star player is in Anthony Edwards. Moving to number 3, I have the Philadelphia 76ers. Yeah, I think it's kind of consensus maybe. People like those Wolves jerseys. I don't know, but I think they're sick. But the Sixers, 9-3 on the year now, down 2 spots from last week where I had them at number 1 because of that impressive win over the Celtics. But now they did lose to the Celtics this week, as well as splitting with the Pacers. But I still think the Sixers are a top 2 team in the Eastern Conference and a top 3 team in the league. I've really liked what I've seen overall from them. And the duo of Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid looks like the best duo in the league right now. Kind of reminiscent of Kobe and Shaq. I don't know if it'll sustain at that level, obviously. But the duo and the pick and roll duo has been really, really impressive. Joel Embiid, 32 points per game, 11 rebounds. He's also averaging 6 assists and the 1.5 blocks. Embiid is arguably even better than he was in his MVP season last year. And Tyrese Maxey, I think, is the most fun player on this team. 27 points per game, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds per game. Maxey looks like a superstar, and looks like a very good chance Maxey makes his first All-NBA selection this season because he has been great. When they get Kelly Oubre back, I think they'll be a better team overall, and with Maxey, Embiid, Oubre, and Tobias Harris, this Sixers team is really good, and they have the ammunition to trade for stuff to make them better as well. I think the Sixers could be really impressive this year, and I have them at number 3 right now. Number 2, I have the Denver Nuggets, which some people might say they should be number 1, but after losing 2 of their 3 games this week, I felt like it would be hard for me to make the real claim that they should be the number 1 team in the league right now. They don't have the best record, and they're still missing Jamal Murray, but they do stay at number 2 for me. Since going number 1 in the first week, they've been number 2 all the other 3 weeks for me. They lose to the Rockets to start the week, they beat the Clippers in kind of a close game, and then they lose to the Pelicans yesterday as well. But Nikola Jokic has been arguably the best we've ever seen from him because the offense and the scoring is better than I can ever remember with Jokic. 30 points per game, 14 rebounds, 9 assists. He's been so good and is the favorite to win MVP at this point, would be his 3rd MVP award. I saw a tweet the other day which was like, wow, it's so crazy that Jokic is going to win his 4th straight MVP award. award. I thought that was funny. I liked it, and he should be winning his 4th straight probably, but looks like the best player in the league still. And Reggie Jackson is doing a solid job as the kind of replacement for Jamal Murray. The Nuggets, to me, are still one of the most feared teams to play in the league. If you get them, you probably think that the Nuggets are going to win in pretty much every matchup. Because of how good Jokic is, Aaron Gordon is the perfect supporting piece. Michael Porter Jr. is a great supporting piece as well. In the Nuggets, I have at number 2. And then at number 1, I have the Boston Celtics, who have the best record in the NBA at this point, sitting at 10-2. They're up 3 spots from where I had them last week. They were at number 4 last week after that loss to the Sixers, but now they win every game this week to move to 10-2 on the year, and they're the best team in the league to me right now. They beat the Raptors, they beat the Knicks, and then they beat the Sixers without Jaylen Brown or Kristaps Porzingis. That was an insane win for Boston, and really a statement victory that we're still the best team in this conference, and we're the best team in the league right now. Jason Tatum will be firmly in MVP conversations as well. 27.5 points per game, 9 rebounds. They're getting 5 assists from Jrue Holiday, who's been really good. Not the same level of scoring we've seen in years past from Jrue Holiday, but he's still doing a bit of everything. And the most fun player for the Celtics team to me has been Derek White. It could be Porzingis, it could be Tatum. There are multiple guys you could have said are the most fun guy, but Derek White putting up 14 points per game, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, and 1 steal, as well as being super clutch and hitting a bunch of big shots for this team. But the Celtics, I think, are number 1, and they should be number 1. But that's the rankings. Let me know if you guys agreed with the rankings down in the comments below. Usually people have something they didn't really like. That's okay. That's fair. But that'll do it for the rankings this week. So I hope you enjoyed. Think about subscribing. I'm on the road to 12,000 subscribers. I'm at like 11.6 now almost. So if you enjoyed, think about subscribing. I do recaps every day. So hopefully you enjoy. Yeah, Bucks versus Mavs should be a really good game. I think it's probably the best game of the night. Luka versus Dame should be great in the backcourt. I don't know how they're going to stop Giannis, though, would be the big thing if you're Dallas, but we'll see. Maybe Giannis won't play, actually, but we'll see. Think about subscribing. That's going to be it for me today. So enjoy your Saturday night of NBA basketball, and I'll have the recap tomorrow morning for the night of games. But thanks for watching. You guys have a good one, and I appreciate you all.